Hi, I'm Tanguy. I've been on the product team at Atlassian for the past 9 years. I'm now head of product for Jira Product Discovery, and it's something I've been working on for the past 3 years. So as you can imagine, today is a very proud moment for both me and my teams to finally announce it to the world. We'll talk about Jira Product Discovery in a minute. But first, I'd like to rewind back to a very important date, which is July 26, 2018. That's when my life as a product manager took a very big turn. For those of you who remember, before there was Slack, there was HipChat. Atlassian was one of the first companies to release a successful chat app to market, up until Slack took this market by storm. And July 26, 2018 is the day that Atlassian announced that we were selling HipChat to Slack and discontinuing the product. That was a very, very tough moment for me and my teams back then. As you can imagine, we had spent years obsessing over customer problems and solutions and very heated debates about the whole thing. And from one day to the next, it was gone. It was by far my biggest failure as a product manager. But if I'm being honest, that wasn't the only one. In fact, my track record as a product manager is 50-50 at best. 50% of the things I worked on succeeded, and 50%, if I'm being generous, of them failed or just delivered under expectations of what we really wanted to achieve with them. It bothered me for a really long time. It really felt like pushing this boulder uphill and not knowing whether we'll be able to get on the other side. But then I realized I'm not alone. Now, can I get a show of hands here for who in this room has read the books or blogs of Marty Cagan? Marty Cagan, OK, cool. A handful of hands up in the air. So Marty Cagan, you could call him the godfather of product management. He has it right for the past decade, at least. Probably very frustrated about how this is all turning out. Back in 2010 or 11, Marty was telling us about the two inconvenient truths of product. The first such truth is that at least half of product ideas will fail. And there are many reasons for that. Maybe customers aren't excited about the idea or not as excited as we are when building them. Maybe they're excited, but the stuff is just too complicated to use or too complicated to implement in their organization. Or everyone's excited, but we, the team building it, can't afford all the iterations it takes to get it right. So that's the first truth. And the second truth, to make things worse, is that even for the ideas that prove to be successful, those ones will take many iterations to get right. So half of product ideas will fail, and even when you finally land on one that will be successful, it will take many more iterations to get right than what you were expecting for it to actually deliver on the value you're expecting. All right? Can I get another show of hands? And this time, I want you to be brutally honest. And only raise your hand if you believe that your organization, your company, has fully accepted these truths and that it shows in the way decisions are made on a day-to-day basis. Holy shit, OK. Oh, sorry, pardon my French. Well, I also saw a few Atlassians with their hands down. That's encouraging. OK, honestly, you are not alone. Over the past 3 years, I've talked to probably close to 200 product managers. And that stuff is just not accepted. Product managers are asked to create a predictable path to success for every product idea. Failure is simply not seen as an option. And it should be. Failures end up costing a lot more because of that. And because we keep investing in them, we can't make way for the ideas that actually will succeed. All right, so where to from here? What does a process look like that actually accepts these truths for what they are, which is truths, things that you cannot bargain or negotiate with? Well, that's what we try to do when creating Jira Product Discovery. So it's not so much a sales speech about the tool. You've seen plenty of that this morning. It's really more of a struggle as a team to come up with the right tool. And that's what I want to walk you through now. So what we've tried to do is to be honest and ask the hard questions, assuming that the product would fail. Again, the most likely outcome. And this product now being on a path to success, we actually believed is due to the fact that we accepted failure as the most likely outcome from the very beginning. So what does it look like? Well, I'm going to talk today about 5 stages: Wanda, explore, make, impact, and scale. Each of these stages is meant to ask the right questions at the right moment. And each of them was designed with failure in mind. So we have clear checkpoints to decide whether we should continue, pivot, or fold. Now, of course, you're like, OK, great, another waterfall process, right? 5 stages, and that's it, success, ta-da! Nah, it doesn't work like that, and you know that. The real process was, the real journey we went through was a lot more chaotic. However, those 5 stages really helped, and those checkpoints really helped us, so we're hoping they can help you as well. So what's the first one? Wanda. Wanda is about finding pervasive problems. And I'm not talking about like, this stakeholder wants this, or there's a gap in the tool, or there's this bug. No, I'm talking about real problems that prevent, in our case, product managers from being successful at their jobs. If we want to help product managers, we need to get to the bottom of that. How do you do that? Well, no secret. We got in touch with our networks. We looked at our current customers, people who are not our customers, people who actually refuse to be our customers, and talked to more than 50 product managers on Zoom as a fully remote team of 2. Now, we spent a lot of time in Zoom, had a lot of conversations, and we spent as much time in Miro collaborating on like trying to create a mental map as to what product success looks like and how the product managers that are successful at their craft operate versus the teams that struggle a lot more. Miro is an amazing tool at this stage actually to help us with all this, working with half-baked ideas and concepts and moving them around without too much structure. Anyway, what we found was, probably one question, which is why would anyone want to be a product manager? On paper, their role is all about impact. You read that everywhere, right? But in reality, the best way I could try to describe it is we're stuck in a hamster wheel, chasing tactical things, never able to step back and look at the bigger picture. What were we hired to do? Look at the bigger picture. But we never have time to do it. And when product managers have to decide on priorities, they never have the data to be able to do it. So it ends up being like a shouting match, loud opinions, or the most senior person in the room making the call, not the right one, always. More specifically, though, we found that if you're in a startup, things are OK. You can hold everything in your head. Everyone can jump into a room, and 5 people can make a decision very quickly on priorities. Full alignment. But as you grow, things become more complicated because more people get involved. Competing priorities are just different ideas as to what those priorities should be and why. You need to start collaborating with support and sales and leadership and other teams that are also shipping product on those product priorities, and you need to get buy-in from everyone. Like the emoji in the middle right there, that's the product manager. And that's how most of them felt when we were talking to them. If you step back and you look at the root cause of that, there's, I think, a clear answer. We've been working with engineers for a long time, and they have Agile. And there's a lot of rituals that comes with that. You can use Kanban, and you can use Scrum, and you can break things down into smaller iterations, and so on and so forth. When it comes to shipping software that scales, you've got DevOps, and you build it, you run it. Engineering and operations teams working together and sharing their craft. And when it comes to aligning on what the company needs to do across all these functions, to agree on product priorities based on goals, well, you got nothing. So at this stage, Wanda, we believe we had found pervasive problems that were preventing product managers from doing their job. And we also believed that Atlassian was in the right position to try and tackle these problems because that's what we focus on, collaboration problems. But at this stage, we still had no solution. We needed 2 things. One was a strong viewpoint on how we wanted to help, And second is a software solution to support these beliefs. So a viewpoint and a solution. In terms of viewpoint, we didn't have far to look because we had all these discussions with product managers that we were having every day. And we really found that there were two different ways of doing product. And one that was coming up as a lot more successful. Not as in every idea becomes successful, but as in the bad ideas are stopped earlier to make ways for the others. And the term that we found that was representing that the most is product discovery. It's the act of assessing continuously what your team should be focusing on and why, based on learnings, not opinions. Taking these learnings, or coming up with these learnings, over shipping working software, up until you've got more evidence that you should actually invest more. Remember, at this stage, we're not even ourselves shipping any software. We're still trying to validate all this. So there's a before and an after. In the world before product discovery, you have requirements that are given to product teams from their stakeholders. In product discovery, they're not given requirements, they're given goals to achieve. You used to have yearly planning processes in closed doors. Now, prioritization discussions are done continuously, every week, every month, involving everyone. I'm talking to business and engineers. You used to have roadmaps that were focusing on what are you going to ship when? Like whoever heard that question, when is that going to ship? When is that going to ship? Not helpful. Instead, you have roadmaps now that focus on the why. Decisions used to be made top-down, and now they're actually based on learnings. So we believe at this stage that we had found a very strong viewpoint, but we still didn't have a clue as to how we would actually go about solving that. There's one thing we knew, though, which is that shipping an MVP for whatever idea we would come up with would be by far the most expensive way to validate that. Shipping software and this concept of MVP, when you're at an early stage, bad idea. The most likely outcome is failure. Don't invest too much in things like this. So we were looking for ways to test ideas before committing to them. We tried many, and I'm going to talk about two today that are very simple to understand. The first one is simply writing slides. Instead of putting people in front of screens and anchoring the way they think about what you're providing, we just presented them with different versions of value propositions for an app that didn't exist yet. We asked product managers to describe how they thought the solution would help them in their day-to-day, and which parts of their workflow this application would solve. Now, we learned a lot this way by being able to iterate super fast. Remember, it's Google Slides. There's no code to write. You can create 15 versions of slides in a single day, talk to 15 different product managers over the course of 3 days, and you iterate and iterate and iterate until you get it right. And it's throwaway, costs nothing. At some point, we started to narrow down on a problem area, which was this concept of unsolicited feedback that seemed to be bothering product managers. They couldn't make way for the important work because they had to deal with all this feedback coming left, right, and center. And so we knew it was time to switch to another way of validating stuff, which was probably closer to a product, but still not a product. And so we went in Figma. And the product manager, myself, a designer, and another product manager, we were in Figma all day. Designing screens, coming up with hero shots, coming up with like key jobs and journeys that we wanted to test for those. And we presented that to the same product managers. And again, we tried to gather a lot more about how they believed the app could help them. And we saw people have a healthy level of interest for what we were doing. So the first thing that we tried is an app that probably takes the problems we found a bit too literally, right? It was an inbox with feedback that you could get from everyone in the organization, and then product managers could sift through it and organize this feedback in what we called collections that would become ideas that you could put on a roadmap and share this roadmap with the rest of the organization. On paper, looks great. In reality, we found, by talking to everyone, it would be far too complicated to pull off. For this to work, we needed the support team, the sales team, the leadership, customer success, product managers, everyone to be in this tool, putting data before they could get any value out of it. How will we pull that off? That's just not a strategy that can work. So we threw it away. And we decided to start again from scratch. And at some point, we started to talk to teams who were not product management teams. We went broader. And we had a discussion with this marketing team. It was super interesting. They were creating this Trello board where they could discuss with their leadership how they wanted to evolve a website that was built by a team of engineers. And people in leadership were very happy to come in there and provide input and vote and move things around up until they agreed on, OK, this is what we want to do next. And then they described that someone in the marketing team would go into Jira and create the ticket for the engineers to implement it. And you could tell they were really uncomfortable with that part of the process. And they were hoping this stuff would get built, not really knowing when or how. Now, we were not a huge fan of this throw-over-the-wall mentality to engineers. However, we started thinking there was something to creating this space for discussing priorities that is friendly for stakeholders. So we started thinking, how might we help product managers run their discovery by bridging the gap that there exists between the technical and the business worlds, so leadership, customer-facing teams, and so on and so forth, in the place where engineers also are. Because remember, you can't agree on priorities and start deciding to ship software without engineers telling you whether that stuff is even feasible. Can we create that space? So we went back to Figma. And that was our first pivot before writing any code. And we started imagining this solution that was a place to assess product ideas and opportunities that's away from the development backlog, where you could use different types of fields to represent different aspects, things like value, impact, effort, and different views, so you can slice and dice this to compare different scenarios and decide how you should approach your prioritization. And now that resonated a lot more with product managers. And conversations from one day to the next, they shifted from mild interest to, can we have this now? We have this problem. Please help us. I need this yesterday. And that's when we wrote our first line of code. But again, we didn't know it would be successful. Remember, the most likely outcome is still failure at this stage. So the first solution was full of hacks, only works in English, it doesn't scale, but it did the job well enough for 10 teams that were really lapping it up. They were really happy about this piece of software. So we decided to go to the next stage. At this stage, we have a validated solution, meaning we know that if we invest in building it, we've got a good enough validation that people will actually have this solution solving their problem. So we entered the make phase. Now, make is about proving value for a small number of customers. Now, I've been doing this for a long time, and I know there's a huge temptation whenever we found the right problem and whenever we've got an inkling of a solution that we're super excited about, to just throw it out there and go, hey, everyone, please try it. Like join the bandwagon, it's going to be amazing. Bad idea. That's a slide from Reforge that does a great job at explaining that. On the left side, so imagine two funnels, right? On the left side is your typical funnel, the product or growth funnel, where you try to get people to find your product and try it and adopt it and then buy it. And you try to optimize for the number of people that flow through this funnel. On the right side, you've got a safety funnel. And it's very simple. It's about preventing people from having bad experiences until you're ready to accept to provide the software to them. That's what we needed. We didn't want to expose too many people to a half-baked experience in Jira too early. Jira has millions of users. It wouldn't be ready for them. They wouldn't be impressed. They would drop off. We would learn nothing. And it would be really tough to convince them to come back when we're ready for them. So we decided to work with a small number of users. Where do we find them? We wanted to find people who are representative of who we're trying to help, they feel the pain the most, and they're willing to use an app that's super early stage and give us a lot of feedback. We put an ad on Atlassian.com, and we kept it as abstract as we could. Hey, product managers, your job is difficult. It's not a very hard case to make. We want to help. Please join us on the journey. Put your email here. that helped us do two things. The first one is, although we're not going to optimize for that funnel for getting people in, it still helps us validate if there's demand. And in a matter of 2 weeks, we had more than 3,000 companies putting their name down. So that validated that. And the second is it gave us a large number of people we could potentially talk to. So we started to go in all the data we have about them in our own systems to understand how do they currently use our products. We went online, on LinkedIn, to try to find how people were talking about the way they were doing product. We interviewed users to figure out if we wanted to work with them. That's kind of backwards when you think about it, based on how we typically work as an industry, to select the users we wanted to work with. And we landed our first Lighthouse users. Now, Lighthouse users, they're very special users for us. And we've been working with them since the beginning of this project. Some of them we've been working with for more than 2 years already. They're special people. It's not more than 10. They clearly stood out in the way they explained their context, the quality of the feedback they gave us, and how creative they were in trying different solutions to solve their pains. We believe that if we were building the right product for them, then it would work for other teams out there. And that's actually an amazing recipe to move fast. You don't need to talk when you found the right users. You don't need to talk to 1,000 to validate something. You talk to one, and you build for them. You can pivot super, super quickly by doing that. Everyone on the team knew them by name. We knew their context, and we knew what we were building for them. And we often pivoted the roadmap based on the feedback of a single one of these users. So at this stage, we had two ingredients: an inkling of a solution that's been validated, and what we believe were the right users to work with to make it a full running product. But assuming we build the right product for them, how are we going to measure and communicate success? Now, of course, there is no way in hell we could just go through all the feedback that we receive from users every day and just give that to our stakeholders every month and go, see, we're doing great. That doesn't work. I've seen way too many product ideas being stopped too early because the product managers were not finding the right way to explain their progress to stakeholders at that very early stage, 0 to 1. We needed a number. But this number could not be number of users. Again, we want to work with a small number of users. I obsessed over that for a long time, over many projects, until I landed on the works of Sean Ellis, who was a product manager in the early stage of growth of Dropbox. He was telling us we could basically ask users a simple question. How disappointed would you be if you could no longer use our product? Very, somewhat, or not disappointed. And then to calculate a percentage, which is the percentage of people who answer very disappointed. I'd be very disappointed if I could no longer use your product. And with that, you ask other questions like, how do you most benefit from the app, or how can we improve it for you? That gave us a number. And it's a number we could communicate with our leadership team that was representative of the stage that we were in, which is a lot more qualitative than quantitative, yet a number that's been benchmarked with more than 100 startups. So we had something to share with leadership, we had something to share with the rest of the team, and a number to track ourselves. We were doing that all in Pendo, which helped us marry the answers we were getting from all these survey questions, as well as product analytics data, so we could identify there are more users to talk to and make the product better. At this stage, we launched an alpha. We had what we needed, right? An early product, new users willing to try it, and a way to measure success. We launched the early alpha, accessible by invitation only, with a goal of growing from 10 to 100 companies with a product market fit score of 40%. The alpha is when the product evolved the fastest. At the end of it, we had one place to capture what is typically scattered across spreadsheets and documents all over the place. All product ideas, the goals they're contributing to, an assessment of their potential impact, and all the discussions about them. Product managers could then keep adding insights to ideas as they learn more from discussions with customers or stakeholders using a one-click Chrome extension and Slack app. Sometimes we got it right, and sometimes we got it really wrong. Like we had started exploring this solution where you could tie the Jira Product Discovery ideas with data from Salesforce and Zendesk to help product teams prioritize using like actual data and use this data in discussions with customer-facing teams. And we realized that the data didn't matter. What mattered were those conversations, not the data itself. So everyone was excited about this. We had validated that over the Figma designs. Everyone was like, yeah, we absolutely want to start using this. We worked hard on it, we shipped it, and we had very few people using it. Instead, people were latching onto much simpler collaboration primitives. We learned that focusing on prioritization discussions on data isn't the right approach for most product teams. Instead, it's a conversation. And so we created simple thumbs up, thumbs down, tag a customer, basically simple things that would trigger the right conversations between product teams and other teams. So at this stage, we got to 100 customers and a product market fit score of over 50%. There was enough evidence of product value to move to the next stage and go for proving this value for a large number of customers. And that's the impact phase, where we launched the beta to go from 100 to 1,000 customers. And we wanted to maintain our product market fit score throughout that time. At this stage, we knew we had to change our approach in building the product. It was not about limiting the people trying it. We needed to be able to get to 1,000, so more people needed to be exposed to it. We made it public. And we focused on this other funnel. Now was the right time. We focused on onboarding. We focused on initiatives to improve retention by addressing customer feedback and so on and so forth. But the key learning that's different, that probably you read less about out there, is what we learned next. Just before we entered the public beta with over 100 customers, we started facing the consequences of how we build this app, which was a giant prototype, not meant for scale. And we had 3 separate incidents of more than 3 hours in 1 month. If we had 100,000 users back then they would probably have seen quite a few of them churn. Now, just to be clear, I am glad we did not invest in this sooner. Why? Well, again, half our product ideas fail. Until we were convinced that we landed on the right solution, there is little point in investing in making it scale. That stuff is super expensive. Building scalable products will slow you down until you actually know that's the product that you need. It's expensive. You can also argue that tech debt will slow you down even further, technical debt. And you'd be right. It's a question of timing and balance. And for us, it was the right time. So we met as a team and decided to reset the way we work. Instead of prototyping like crazy all the time, we defined a pyramid for how to approach these changes. We decided to allocate the time we spent in the team, the overall capacity, on 3 buckets. The first one is reliability, making sure the app stays up at all times and can be trusted. The second one is boulders, building the new features. That's the stuff that your stakeholders ask for, your customers ask for all the time. But the middle one is often overlooked, and that's making continuous improvements to the current experience. And that's the thing that actually got us to better user satisfaction in the end. So reliability is the invisible work. It's everything that's happening behind the scenes to make sure the system is up and responsive. Improvements is simple things like improving an interaction so people can get to where they want it to go, fixing simple bugs and stuff like that, but it's also larger initiatives like this list component right here, which was used it's by far our most used component in the app today, and people, of course, because that's the case, kept having feedback about making it better and better. And as we were building more and more and more on top of it, it started to look like a house of cards. And it was hard to maintain. So we decided to rewrite it entirely in the background, and from one day to the next, flick the old one to replace it with a new one and throw away the old code. It was a worthwhile investment. It took 2 to 3 months. A lot of users were actually raving about the new one. And then you've got boulders, more familiar with stuff like that, building new features. And that's the part where we kept working like we were working during the alpha. Try something, see if it sticks, and if it sticks, invest in making it better. So that's where things like templates came out of. Product managers were struggling to get people to describe why something would be important and impactful, and so they could create their own templates or use one of our own so people could describe that. Or a matrix view, so product managers could plot ideas on an impact versus effort matrix and move them around to discuss what would be a boulder, so something that would have a large impact but also a high effort, or quick wins. They could create and share roadmaps that explain the why. right? The goal each initiative ladders up to, or the priority was decided, and so on and so forth. But we also realized that different stakeholders want different things from a roadmap. So we had to make it so that can be reflected in the roadmaps themselves. So here you're looking at a now, next, someday roadmap that would work well in a discussion with a chief product officer. Or you could create one that's more based on time, but again, broad buckets, right? It's not about a Gantt chart, it's about discussing priorities. So which team is going to work on what and for what effort, and what's the sequencing of things for discussions with engineering leadership. We were entering the beta with the hope of exiting with 1,000 customers. Instead, the results far exceeded our expectation. The product is used by thousands of companies and tens of thousands of users every week. Our product market fit score stayed over 50% this whole time, so we knew it was time to move to the next phase, the scale phase. What is it about? Moving from a successful product to a successful business. And that's what we're announcing today with the launch of Jira Product Discovery that's coming very soon. Now, you will get the most value out of the tool if you adopt it along with a new way of working with continuous product discovery. Centering the conversation on goals, please, not timeframes. Making prioritization a continuous process involving everyone. No yearly meetings to decide on those priorities. Creating roadmaps that focus on the why, not the when is that going to ship. And making decisions based on learnings and defining your commitments based on these learnings, not just opinions. Now, you don't have to become Marty Kagan overnight. If you can just become a better product manager 1% every month, it's going to be amazing if you compound that. Now, soon we'll release a product discovery handbook that explains the ways of working that we've used to come up with the tool. And on a more personal note, a lot of this came from my struggles as a product manager. Remember the HipChat story? Accepting the possibility of failure allowed me to be more honest about the progress, keep asking the right questions, and confront the right problems earlier. It makes actually me wonder what the outcome would have been for HipChat if I knew that stuff earlier. Now it's your turn, right? We can't wait to see what you're going to create with it. The good news is now you have a product to help you with that journey, and we can't wait to talk to you all about it. I'll be here all day. If you want to chat, at happy hour as well tonight. And yeah, thank you very much.